Alright, we're going to make a leather bottle. Let's see how this pattern I just drew up works out. As you can see, there were several iterations of what shape do I want to make this, how wide base do I want to make. And I even forgot to add on a little tab and had to just tape a piece on for where the strap is going to go on it. So we're off to a great start already on this project. But let's see how it goes from there. This is just part of the pattern. It's just a half of, well, half of a half. It's just a quarter of the total bottle. So we're gonna mark this piece, and to make it symmetric, we're gonna flip it over and line up right next to where it was, and mark the other side of that half. Okay, so I've got these two pieces cut out. Last piece that I need is going to be the bottom of it, and I decided to use the same size as the bottom of the leather mugs I make, so I'm going to do it the same way basically. I'm just going to take it's about a 5-inch round circle piece of leather that I've cut, and it's a piece of 3-inch DWV Schedule 40 PVC pipe, and a hose clamp. And you just kind of force all of the above together. And then we're going to get ready to stitch these pieces together. So let's grab a stitching groover. Alright, work our way up from the bottom to the top. And then from the top to the bottom on the other side. Let's give ourselves a stitching line to follow. Now obviously I don't want to sew this shut because that's going to be the spout. And I don't want to sew this shut because that's going to be where I put the bottom in. You could just sew this shut and make a bottle that's not flat on bottom. Won't stand up on its own. But the whole point of this is to make a little bit better one. So now I should probably put a gusset in these seams, or a welt in these seams. Wrong word there. I should use a welt. But I'm going to see if it holds real well without, since this leather is plenty heavy enough. I think it'll seal okay, and I won't have too much trouble with it because they seal right on the bottom of my cups. But probably the best way to do this is to put a welt between these, which is just another piece of leather in the middle. But I am going to do a second line of stitching on these. So I'm going to adjust my stitching groover out. This type, it has a little set screw. And just adjust that to the width of the other one you want to do. And we're going to mark another line too. Now, we will see if I left enough space here for the bottom piece and so on after we get it stitched up. That's part of why this is an experiment, because while you can kind of math out what that's supposed to be, it doesn't always take everything into account, and sometimes still make mistakes. So I might have to make adjustments and cut even more pieces of leather out, but we'll see. Okay, so I'm going to use a fitting for a 3-inch PVC pipe instead of 3-inch PVC pipe. And that's going to add that extra about a quarter of an inch, well, a little bit more than that actually, probably closer to 3/8 of an inch in diameter. And that's going to add at least 3/4 of an inch in circumference, you know, that pi d thing going on there. But anyway, the outer diameter of it is almost exactly the same as the outer diameter of the leather piece wrapped over the regular 3-inch PVC. So once I wrap this leather over top of it, like I said, it'll take up that extra amount. I'm just going to have to use a little bit bigger piece of leather for this. So I'll go ahead and cut one of those out and shape it, and we'll be back. Alright, this time around I've cut a 6-inch circle and soaked it down real good. Alright, now we wait again. Okay, as you can see, I let this dry until it was firm, but I didn't let it dry all the way. And then went ahead and stitched it in. And I've still got to do some hand stitching here to fill in kind of these ends. I'm going to stitch down, basically I'm going to punch some holes with an awl and stitch down to close in this corner some. Pull it in tight. And I'm going to do that, you know, all four sides here. But it's all pretty much going to be the same. It's just going to be going along, like I said, with an awl. Old school way of doing things, which is hard to do in skirting. And punch some holes by hand. Without, hopefully, punching holes in me. Wet leather is also not as easy to do this in. It tends to grab the awl a little bit. Another reason to kind of let it dry. But I'm being impatient. So I'm going to do that and then probably do some trimming or grinding off these edges. And then we'll be back to shape this thing next. Okay, now we've got this all sewn together. As you can see, I've got it all the way down to those ends in there. Just pull all that tight, get it into place. It actually helped that this was still a little wet. I can pull it in nice and tight. I don't think I'll have much trouble sealing that up. So, next step is going to be to actually shape this. So I'm going to go dunk this and let it soak for a few minutes. Get it really good and wet. And me and Pepper went to her favorite store and got some popping corn. A gallon jug of it. And we're going to use that to actually shape this. I've heard of a lot of different things. Sand, rice, popcorn, rocks, you know, pea gravel, various things that people have used to shape these. But like I said, I have a place where I can get a big jug of popcorn. I'm going to use that. Okay, I've got this all wet down. It's several minutes in a wash tub. And I'll start stuffing it with popcorn. Pretty much just going to use a funnel. Just kind of what you'd expect. Not a hard process to figure out. Just a lot of this. Alright, now this has started to kind of drastically change the shape of it, bringing in the sides, pushing it all out, spreading the bottom out, leveling it all off, as I've been sort of pounding it on the table. But we got ourselves a respectable looking leather bottle there. I've got a stop here that I've turned out of a piece of cherry, and we're going to do one more thing with that before we let this all dry. And that is we're going to make a little strap of leather that's going to just wrap around, and it's going to be like a gasket in there. And just something for the stopper to fit into real nice and tight. So we're just going to overlap it some, and we're going to skive both ends and stuff it in there. And then when we wax the bottle and line it, that'll get stuck in there with the liner and have something for the stopper to always work against. It's something I've seen on some artifacts that have been found, and it's either on the stopper or it's in the bottle. I'm not ever been quite sure which, but I'm going to put it in the bottle. We're just gonna fit that down in there. And that makes a nice round surface for us to seal the stopper against, rather than having these two little points, these little wings sticking out. Okay. And from there, I'll trim this off later, but let's let all this dry. It's going to take a while too. Bottles take a bit to dry out. But I managed to put in quite a bit of that gallon of popcorn, so good sized bottle. Okay, unlike with the mugs that I make, this is too big to fit in my little slow cooker here full of beeswax. But it is hardened up really well now. And we're going to go ahead and probably knock a few more of the kernels of corn out of it, because there's always a few left. Oh, there's one. And for waxing it, I've also got a brush and a heat gun. And of course this tray with the grate on top of it, so that I can use all that to kind of baste it with wax. I'm also going to treat the plug with beeswax. I just let some of it really soak into it. And we'll go ahead and hit that with the heat gun as well. Oh, the one thing I did forget, I'm going to need some paper towels for this too. There we go. Now we got our plug waxed. Let's go ahead and do the same with our bottle. And you can kind of soak the bottom of it. You don't want to get it too hot in anyone's place though. And of course you can just do this with any amount of melted wax and just brush it on. And then occasionally go over it with the heat gun. I've also heard of people doing this with an oven, that they'll just keep like baking it and basting it at a low temperature. You can't really get it over about 170, 180 degrees before the leather starts to deform. And the problem with that, of course, being that a lot of ovens don't really want to go that low, or the metal in them gets hotter than that while they're on, and then you can deform the whole mess just where it's in contact with the metal racks in the oven. Yeah, all this wax that's just stuck on it. We're going to go ahead and hit it with the heat gun and get it to soak in. And like I said, since I can't completely dunk this, it's going to take a bit more work. It's going to be a bit more of a process. But it's just going to be a lot more of this. Now this little piece that's sitting in here will kind of wander around a bit for right now. But in the end, what I'm going to do is I'm going to warm that up and put the plug in to shape it. And then it'll either stick to the plug or it'll stick inside the bottle. But eventually when I line this, the liner will hold it in. Okay, so lining it. I've got my usual mixture of, it's half and half beeswax and brewer's pitch that I've kind of cooked up in this double boiler setup here. And this is a lot smaller opening than I'm used to with mugs, so see how much of a mess I make doing this. But there's a reason I've got the pan. And if you kind of decant it out and run it down something like this, usually it's easier to hit the spot you're trying to hit. That's quite a bit of this stuff in there. That should be enough. Only a couple drips. That's doing good. And we're just going to kind of roll it around. I did get a couple drips out of the bottom there that caused some problems. Alright, we'll let that harden in there a little bit. Because as I said, I got a couple drips coming out of the bottom and wound up on my hands. Luckily they weren't real warm by then. And I said we got some on the that I dripped while I was pouring it in here too. We'll just wipe that off real quick. Alright. Let's do a second, and maybe even a third coat, just to see, make sure that we got everything. But let's go ahead and put our leather piece in the top here, so we can put our stopper in later. Or, well, probably gonna put the stopper in right away to shape it. But that should stick on there real good now. You can kind of shape the pitch and wax liner. Even when it feels like it's almost cool, it can just be a little warm. But you kind of almost shape it like caulk. I'm going to go ahead and let all this cool down or harden up, and then I'll see how much water it holds and how well it holds water. Okay, so it's full of water. It's been holding water. There's no seeps anywhere around it, anywhere around the bottom, so that means I got it sealed up good. I haven't tested the cap yet. It does drip a little bit out around the stopper. Let's see if we can get a better seal on that. If you really push it in there, it doesn't. That works really well. Alright, so the stopper even holds water if you push it in there good and tight. Let's see how much water it had in it. Okay, so it looks like I am almost right at 2 quarts, so half a gallon of water. That's in the about 1,800 milliliter range, I guess, for those that are metrically inclined. Almost 2 liters. I mean, it's getting pretty close. So that's a pretty good sized bottle. So half gallon bottle, holds water. Let's do a few more finishing touches, like finishing up these edges that are a little rough. And let's make a strap and attach the stopper somehow so it doesn't get lost. So mostly, since this is waxed leather, I'm just going to kind of go around, trim edges. They could have been trimmed earlier. Some of them don't really need it. And of course, I'll just kind of burnish them and wax them down again. Usually, you go and burnish these and they blend right in. And it's not that hard. Alright, for a strap, I'm just going to use some of this 1/2-inch leather lace that's, it's about 6 ounces thick. It's pretty heavy stuff. That's a nice brown color. I'm just going to use some of that for it. And we're going to go ahead and plan on doing a bit of a bleed knot here. So let's go ahead and I'm just punching 2 slots through it. I just did them both at the same time with a wood chisel. Not being very precise about it in any sort of way. But we'll go ahead and feed that through these 1/2-inch holes that I punched before. Alright. So we're going to feed the little end through that strap there. Still a tight fit, that's a good sign. And then we're going to cut off enough of this to make a good loop. Give ourselves a little extra just to be sure. And we're going to feed that back up through the slot that's at the end of this little one that we just pulled through the other piece. That'll lock this side in all good and tight. Now, there's not really a good way to do that same thing on the other side, but we'll just tie the other side. And then it's adjustable, kind of, because somebody can just move the knot and change it however they want. But this side will stay put. Adjust this in the future. Alright. And on that, I'm going to go ahead and tie basically a lark's head, which is going to make a really tight fit through this hole. It might have a different name when you're using it like this than lark's head, I don't remember. It's that type of hitch that's got a lot of names. There we go, pull that up good and tight. There's our carry strap. That's a good long one for crossbody if somebody wants to use it like that, but they can always take this loose and retie it, make it shorter if they want. Now then, let's address some way that this stopper doesn't get lost. I find a screw-in eye that I like, so I found a screw-in hook that I just sort of squished shut. And it's kind of misshapen, but I think that works well with this particular project. And then I sort of knocked the pretty off of it because it was brass plated and I didn't want that, so I heated it up with a torch real quick. And while it cooled down, I put some beeswax on it and let it burn on. Give it a more of a blacksmith looking sort of finish. So, odd little hook there, but that'll do. And it covers the spot on top of here from the lathe. All in all, I'm happy with that. Now, we just need a little bit of lace. There we go. Decided to cut a narrower piece from a bit of scrap, rather than use my piece of 1/2 inch wide here that I can use for something else. So we're just going to take that, and I'm going to tie it right here through the bleed knot. Untie. Water knot. Let's make a water knot. water knot is just it works really well in flat webbing. It's an overhand knot, world's simplest knot. And then you take your other piece, and it follows around inside that knot and goes the opposite direction. Does the same thing, just inside the other piece. It's just an overhand on a bite. It's just a different way of tying it. And you could have tied it as an overhand on a bite and put it in here before you did the bleed knot. But that'll hold good and solid, not going anywhere. And then we can just do our hitch up here. Let's go about, we're gonna need most of this. And there's a lot of different hitches for tying on the rings. But again, I think I'm just gonna use a lark's head, or whatever it's called when you use it, as a ring hitch. Now then, 1 half-gallon water bottle.